Good, good, good. Oop. Bum, bam, boom, boom, boom.
You ready? All right. Thank you so much for being here. This is Legislation Committee of the Board of Alders, and I'll begin by reading the notice. Board of Alders notice, New Haven. Thank you, Vice Chair. The Legislation Committee of the Board of Alders will meet in person on Wednesday, November 15th at 6 o'clock. In our Alders Chamber, located at 165 Church Street, second floor, New Haven, Connecticut, to hear and act on the following items. LM-2023-0514, ordinance amendment of the New Haven Board of Alders to OR-2023-0021, the flood damage prevention ordinance. LM-2023-0513, ordinance amendment of the New Haven Board of Alders to OR-2023-0021, Title V, Board of the City of New Haven's Code of Ordinances to bring flood damage prevention ordinance into compliance with the Uniform Building Code for the state of Connecticut. And 3 LM-2038-0571, ordinance amendment of the New Haven Board of Alders to section 2-796 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of New Haven, updating sections of the Civilian Review Board ordinance. Per order, Honorable Ellen Cupo, Chair, attest to Honorable Michael Smart, City Town Clerk. These items are on file and available in the Office of the City Clerk, room 202 at 200 Orange Street, New Haven, Connecticut 06510. For accessibility related accommodations, please call 203-946-7651 or 203-946-8582. Public comment testimony may be submitted via email to publictestimony@newhavencct.gov before 2 p.m. on the day of the meeting. This meeting may be viewed on New Haven Board of Alders YouTube page. At this time, I'm going to ask that my colleagues introduce themselves, beginning with my colleague from the 4th Ward and down.
Alder Evelyn Rodriguez, 4th Ward.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Richard Furlow, Ward 27.
Ellen Cupo, Ward 8.
Eli Sabin, Ward 7.
Excellent, and welcome. What a full room. So this time I'm going to ask that the makers of item LM-2023-0514 come forward. Good evening.
Madam Chair.
If you could please state your names
Yep.
and addresses for the record.
Hi, my name is John Nuff. I'm an attorney with an office at 135 Broad Street in Milford, Connecticut.
Good evening, Laura Brown, Director of the City Plan Department. I reside at 262 West Rock Island.
Thank you, and please feel free to begin your presentation.
Sure, thank you. And this is very straightforward. And as I said to your staff, Misty today, I'm doing sort of old school. I'm going to hand. I don't know if you have copies of our proposed ordinance change, but I do, as well as the city plan report.
I think we have a copy.
And it's easier, I actually mark the page because the change, frankly, is so, I don't want to say, it's really important to us, but it's sort of small in the overall scheme of things. But let me give you a quick background, I apologize. So you'll recall that we spent several nights here with this committee with regard to the Long Wharf mixed-use zone. I represent NASA Abloy and Sergeant Manufacturing, and our concern during that process was the rendering of our property being non-conforming. Through the work with the city, both this committee, the Board of Alders, city staff, Lord Brown, of course, we came up with a really wonderful solution to solve that, which is the overlay zone. And so we're no longer a non-conforming use, and so everyone was gratified with that result. At around that same time, we became aware of the proposed flood ordinance modification. And at one point, we tried to get a modification or revision to that at the second reading, and I think it was determined that it's probably better just let it go through and then submit our own proposed ordinance revision, which is what we've done. And we submitted a draft to the Board of Alders, went to the City Planning Commission. They approved it unanimously with a change in the language, which no substantive change, but we had no objection to it, and that was approved. Since then, Laura and Corporation Counsel have continued to tweak it a little bit. And again, I think it's clear. I agree with them. We had no objection to the City Plan Commission's report originally and how they proposed to change it, but this is certainly clearer and much easier to understand. So the long and short of it is, if you're looking at 5.1.15 hazardous materials, it says all new development or substantial improvements with hazardous materials must follow the requirements outlined in the current Connecticut State Building Code. And then here's the important part. The development or expansion of the following uses are prohibited in the special flood hazard area. And if you look at 5.1.15.2, it says all uses outlined in the zoning ordinance, table T under T, industrial. Well, that would put us back to the exact same spot where we were when we were non-conforming use. So we simply have the exception, except manufacturing, and then Laura and Corp Counsel have simplified that more to what has just been handed to you. So with the exception being all uses outlined in the zoning ordinance of the City of New Haven, Article 5, Section 42, use regulations for business and industrial districts in Table 3 under T industrial, except manufacturing, arts and manufacturing, and antenna or wireless sites and transmitting towers for radio or television stations that also comply with Section 5.1.20. Now, we of course don't care about arts and manufacturing or antennas or wireless sites, but it certainly seems to make sense. This was language that was suggested by city plan staff. We have no objection, and we certainly have no objection to simplifying the language and making it all more clear for subsequent generations who might be reviewing this. That's it.
I'll ask for questions from the committee. Alter Perla.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Attorney, for your presentation. I would like to hear from City Planning, and so the flood plan, it is staying in sync with anything that may be residential, or
Yes, this wouldn't impact residential at all because the use table is with regard to business uses.
yep. So why would just curious, why would manufacturing be exempt?
So, I mean, one reason is that when the Long Wharf Responsible Growth Plan was envisioned, and the way it was written, ASA Abloy was envisioned to continue operating in that zone. So that is why in the MU district, we carved out the coastal overlay. It makes sense to me for manufacturing to be exempt because quite honestly, when we looking at the use table right now, I feel that it's somewhat inappropriate for manufacturing to be packaged under the broad umbrella of industrial, which includes a lot of uses. If you flip over this page, I've provided an example that in my view are quite different from modern manufacturing practices. So when our zoning ordinance was written, most manufacturing may have involved hazardous substances, natural resources, outdoor storage. I mean, some of these things may still exist in manufacturing, but modern manufacturing does not necessarily imply that these types of hazardous materials will be used. So when the flood damage prevention ordinance was written, it referenced T industrial broadly. And our feeling was, one, modern manufacturing practices can allow these businesses to operate in a special flood hazard area in ways that would not be otherwise detrimental to our environmental ecosystems or cause other issues related to flood damage. In fact, they would still be subject to all of the other provisions in the flood damage prevention ordinance, including use of any hazardous substance, exclusion of any hazardous substances in the special flood hazard area. So.
And if I can just echo that, and I think what Laura said at the very last issue is the most important. We're not seeking an exemption from any of the other requirements. I mean, candidly, we have no plans to expand or do anything else, but at some point in the future, we didn't want this very simple, straightforward provision to preclude that. So we have not scoured through every provision. We haven't hired engineers to see how else this may affect us. So we are conceding that we have to comply with every other requirement, but we also do want this blanket prohibition to any expansion of any kind. If there was the need to, I don't know, create a new truck dock or to expand an office area in a way that complies with all the other requirements, frankly, this would have included that. So it was a very simple fix.
And just to have it on the record, because you're sitting on a body of water, I did a little research and I found the pictures before the company was there, and that was all water. And it was filled in with sand, and I was sitting on top. So what, just very briefly, what would be some of the regulations that are currently required that this business would have to comply with?
So it would be the flood, all the provisions in the flood damage prevention ordinance that requires a flood development permit.
Could you give us like just maybe one or two examples of that?
Of what that, like the types of provisions in the flood damage prevention ordinance?
Yes.
So it would be regulation of underground storage tanks, regulations of certain types of materials that would be prohibited. Our office, quite honestly, doesn't enforce the flood damage prevention ordinance. It's the building department. Types of structures, and you'll hear another, at the next meeting, you'll hear another suggested amendment related to floodproofing of those structures. So those would be some examples.
Right. So if you look at section 5.1, the general standards, I mean, they are extensive of what we would have to comply with. And that being said, as Laura said, underground storage tanks, above ground storage tanks, new construction, substantial improvement of any structure shall have the lowest finished floor, elevated at least 2 feet above base flood elevation. So this is not simply allowing the expansion doesn't mean we avoid any of these other, very strict requirements. And candidly, I don't know whether we could comply with all these, but again, we just wanted to make sure that there wasn't a blanket prohibition, and that if we can comply with all the other requirements and ensure environmental safety, we wanted the ability to expand.
And I know sometimes it seems redundant, but I think it's important just to have a little bit of this conversation public record.
Yeah.
And additionally, because I had eye surgery and I can't see this paper.
Yeah.
And so it just helps me also with guiding our discussion after. Thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the time.
Any other questions? Well, thank you so much for your presentation. And we will. Thank you. Has anyone signed up to testify in this item tonight?
Go ahead. Okay. Madam Chair, there isn't a sign-up sheet. I will go get a sign-up sheet for our third item,
Excellent,
and
thank you.
then maybe they can raise their
All
hands.
right. Well, this time I'll ask if there's any members of the public who are wishing to testify in this item, please come forward. Second time, if there's anyone from the public wishing to testify in this item, please come forward. For our third and final time, if there are any members of the public present who would like to provide testimony on this item, please come forward. Seeing none, we're gonna move on. We're gonna pass over LM 2023 0513 by request of the applicant, which brings us to LM 2023 0571. And this is the ordinance amendment of the Newman Board of Alders, just section 2-976 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of New Haven, updating sections of the Civilian Review Board ordinance. And I would ask that members of the CRB who are here to present, please support.
I don't think we had an opportunity to set up I didn't see, is Misty Mazza?
Mr. Lucas is on staff tonight.
Yeah. Do you guys know whether you can accommodate that?
I think we usually do that. That's about right.
Usually what?
Usually somebody.
Says next.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got a flash drive?
Yeah, I do. I also sent it to her via email, but
Flash me.
it's got like a million things on it.
All right, well, Stan, you're right here. Tell me which one it is.
And we do have a hard copy, Madam Chair.
Yeah, they all have it at the desk.
I don't. I didn't print it out.
Copy. To walk it through. Hold on.
So while Mr. Lucas is getting that set up, if you wouldn't mind giving your names and addresses for the record.
Anne Marie Rivera Barrios, 19-21 Chester Street, New Haven, 06513.
You were,
John Pescatore, 242 Bradley Street, New Haven.
Zero presentation.
touch it.
Oh.
Yeah, touch screen. Look at that.
I'm sorry, Beth Merkin, attorney for the board. I'm going to go for tonight.
Thank you so much. And when you're ready, we'll proceed with your presentation.
There you go. There's no clicker again. So you're gonna have to
Okay.
move it
Does
with
it-
your finger.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that our board members are going to give an introductory statement before I proceed, if that's okay.
Okay. Hi, my name is Anne Marie Rivera Barrios. I am the New Haven Police Civilian Review Board Chair. I am here with the Vice Chair, John Pescatore, and Member Cummings. All members support this change, and anyone who was unable to attend tonight sent in a letter of support. I wanted to thank everyone for taking the time to be here tonight to listen to this topic of importance. I wanted to thank Police Chief Jacobson and his team for taking the time to be here, making this a high priority item, and taking the time to work with us to ensure accountability and transparency for the community. In order for the CRB to function in the best interest of the community, we need to have access to all unredacted complaints filed by members of the community within 5 days. We also need access to complaint case files within 90 days of civilian filing. I want to give you a quick snapshot of how important this is. In 2023, 58 cases were opened in Internal Affairs Department, but only 16% of complaints filed were investigated and closed within 90-day target set by the Chief of Police. 4 out of 5 complaints filed by citizens took more than 90 days, with 32.3% taking between 121 and 200 days to complete. 22.6 have taken more than 200 days to complete. This leaves open cases unaddressed for a prolonged period of time. As of October of 2023, there were still 67 cases open, with 1/3 of cases going back to 2021 and 2022. The ordinance presently requires disclosure within 5 days of receipt of the complaint and to share it with the CRB. The CRB is not permitted access to any IA files until they are officially closed. We then have 90 days to review an internal affair file and make a recommendation on closed complaints. Our ordinance already says the investigators must notify the CRB of case closures at the same time as they notify the chief. Our ordinance already says the CRB has the right to investigate a complaint. What we are asking for is changes that strengthen the timeline or the timeliness of those investigations so that the community feels heard promptly so we can continue to build trust and confidence in the process. We need these changes to strengthen the community's confidence that their concerns are heard and improvements are carried out.
There are measures in the proposed language of what you'll see today that will allow the board to function more effectively. In the past 3 years, we've made many recommendations to the chief of police related to protocol and procedures aimed at improving police response to those in crisis or suffering from drug addiction, mental health illness, and domestic violence. We're very happy that Chief Jacobson has added training for all officers, not just cadets, to teach police about implicit bias and how to recognize racial discrimination, even in its most subtle forms. We have recommended increased use of the new Compass program and are seeing how compassionate policing has improved outcomes for interactions with the homeless population in New Haven. But there is more with these proposed changes that can be done. We want to be very specific about this, and that is why reviewing these civilian complaints is important and must be done within a firm timetable. The CRB was established to guarantee to the public that the complaint process is fair and will deliver tangible and timely results. This is why we are asking you to support the revisions in their entirety, to give the Civilian Review Board the best chance to succeed.
Thank you for your support of the ordinance revision proposed tonight. I want to thank everyone that helped organize and help make this happen, especially Chair Ellen Cupo, Attorney Catherine Lamar, our Administrator Allison Heimer, Board of Alder staff including Al Lucas, Misty Maza, and Barbara Montalvo, along with others in Ellicott administration. This work is important, and I hope you will agree and show your agreement by voting these changes out of committee unanimously for the full Board of Alders to consider. Thank you for your time tonight. I now turn it over to Attorney Merkin, the CRB attorney, who will share our presentation that outlines the importance of the ordinance change. Thank you.
Thank you, board members. Again, my name is Beth Merkin. I have been hired by the board to represent them in a variety of matters.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, she may want to use the microphone.
Oh, okay, sorry. Is this one working?
Here's a try.
Yeah. Okay,
Gently pull it a little
okay.
closer to you, and I
Sure.
think.
Yes. And I want to start by saying that I think I left my entire file in my car or in my office. So I don't have a copy in front of me. If you can't read and want to lend me, or not the PowerPoint so much as the red line version, I don't know if there's a spare copy somewhere. Sorry.
Thanks.
And I had so many notes, I'm gonna have to just, do my best. But I will.
We have till midnight.
No, I'm gonna take that.
Wow. This is
That's when the
great.
lights go out.
All right. If you need to share.
Oh, no, I've got that.
Okay. Okay, so this presentation really walks us through step by step the important changes that we're looking to make. And I would encourage you guys to ask me questions during the presentations rather than wait till the end of the presentation. So,
Don't press the button.
Speaking to
just speak here like this.
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 It should be voice activated.
Okay.
Yep.
That works?
Yes.
Okay, okay. So in terms of kind of the overarching goals here, there are a couple. And I think you can, if you've reviewed these materials, which I'm sure you. Yep, here we go. Okay. You can see this throughout some of the revisions that we are proposing. But our goals are to strengthen the role of the CRB. As it stands right now, there are some weaknesses in the current ordinance or the way that it's been interpreted and applied. We're trying to strengthen ourselves and our role and our scope of authority. We are trying to get better and more timely access to investigative affairs materials. And so that's something I'll go through these as we kind of proceed. We're trying to make sure that the New Haven Police Department, the chief of police, doesn't act on any disciplinary decisions without first having reviewed any recommendations that we submit. And again, I'll detail all these a little bit down the road. And we're trying to do some kind of house cleaning internally, and just to make sure that our membership system, our board structures are a bit more organized and more efficient. There must be a special place on this. Okay, just by way of background, the initial ordinance that we are operating from was enacted in 2019. So we are pretty much a young organization. 2019 is when the ordinance passed. Our first board was seated in 2020. In 2021, there was the first board meeting. We were starting, and when I say we, I was not involved with the board at that time. The board started reviewing cases in 2021. These guys were both part of the original group. You guys should interrupt if I'm making any mistakes. They started getting training, and then in 2022, I think, is when they could start to see how this ordinance was being implemented and applied. And they already, I think, early on started to see some problems and some obstacles and challenges. In March of this year, they hired an administrator, Allison Heimer. She's not with us tonight. She's sick. There were discussions ongoing about ways that we can make ourselves stronger. What are some areas of concern? Apparently this was going on during meetings throughout, right? They started working on some proposed changes earlier this year. I was hired at the end of July, and one of my first tasks was to look at this ordinance, listen to kind of how it wasn't working in certain ways, and see if there's some recommendations that we can make to improve on our role and our function. We submitted these changes, I think, let me see something here, maybe late September. We shared them with the New Haven Police Department. Again, I don't have my notes. I think mid-October. We've met with the New Haven Police Department on a couple of occasions to try to discuss kind of whether there could be a meeting of the minds with regard to some of these new ideas. So this was the process that was kind of a collaborative one. We also presented it to our own board at our September meeting. We went line item by line item as a group, and everybody kind of agreed that these changes were important and necessary. And we submitted our final draft that you guys are looking at, I think, earlier this month. Maybe end of October, actually. So, the point here, I think the reason that I wanted to show this to you is that we're still young. There are growing pains. There are always, when you see new ordinances or new statutes enacted, there are always stumbling blocks when they're implemented. Where's the best place? Everywhere. Just one thing. I have you stand there.
Oh, that works.
There are always ways that people can't anticipate how things might pan out, how they might work, how they might not work. And in 2019, when this went into effect, I don't know that anybody knew how these things would play out. And it's discovered that there are problems. Okay. Oops, sorry. So again, just a little bit of legislative history. Again, in 2019, this was our first ordinance. There's some language in the ordinance or in the kind of enabling provision that says, be it ordered, the City of New Haven hereby enacts a civilian review board for the sole and exclusive purpose of assuring public confidence in the use of police powers in the City of New Haven by means of providing a mechanism for fair, independent, complete, and transparent review of civilian complaints of alleged police misconduct. That was the kind of the enabling mission statement that precedes the ordinance. In 2020, you probably know that on a state level, our legislature enacted the Police Accountability Act. And again, it establishes kind of the authority for towns and municipalities to set up CRBs. And it gives those CRBs the authority to issue subpoenas and to have access to documents, books, and papers that the board deems relevant to do its investigations. So the proposals that you're looking at really are consistent with these overriding missions that are stated both in our original enactment and on the state level, the Connecticut Accountability Act. So right up top, we added some language to our mission in section 2-797. The original language for our objective is up top. I added what I think is important language, that it's our role to be a part of the impartial investigations and adjudications of complaints made against the New Haven Police Department with the goal of developing increased trust and confidence between the citizens of New Haven and the board, and the members of its police department. So it's that last sentence that I think we really care about a lot. And it's part of, any CRB's mission is to make sure that the community trusts that we are a valid entity and we are working to conduct these independent investigations. Oops, just do one at a time. So, the current process I've outlined or I've kind of set up in black. In red, what you're going to see is kind of our new suggestions for improvements. So under the current process, a citizen would file a complaint, and I'll go down step by step, or the chief of police can open his own complaint. Okay, if he learns of internal problem, he can file his own complaint. We do not have jurisdiction as our board to be involved in those internal investigations. Okay, we just kind of focus on citizen complaints. One of the new provisions that we are proposing is that as a board, we would have the authority to initiate our own complaint. Okay, even if a citizen chooses not, for some reason, to file a complaint, there's a provision, and I'll go through these one by one later on. This is just an overview. A citizen would have the right, the board would have the right, upon a majority vote, to initiate its own complaint. Go ahead. Under the current ordinance, the New Haven Police Department must provide a copy of the complaint to the CRB within 5 days of its filing. As it stands right now, those complaints that we receive are redacted. They are redacted in an important way. They are redacted. They do not contain the contact or identifying information of the complainant. All right, they give the name of the complainant, and they show the part where the allegations are stated, but they have redacted the phone number, address, email address, any identifying information of that complainant when they provide a copy of the complaint. Our proposed revisions seeks to shut that down. As it stands right now, we receive cases from the Internal Affairs Unit once they have completed their investigation. And we have no access to their documents. We have no access to their file until they have completed their investigation and prepared a report. Okay, that is supposed to take 90 days according to their internal policies. Unfortunately, it takes much longer in most instances than 90 days. So we as a board are in a position where we don't have access to those documents sometimes until 6 months after the filing of a complaint, or in some cases a year after the filing of a complaint. So we don't have the address, phone number, or contact information of the complainant, and we also don't have the ability to look at their file until it's closed. The new language requires that they give us access within 90 days. Okay, and when I say access, what I mean is that we would be able to go in to the Office of the Internal Affairs and review police reports, body cam footage, witness statements, photographs, whatever they are collecting in connection with their investigation, we should be given access to. Okay, we are given access to all of that, again, after their case is closed, but we think it's important to have further access. The current system, once we review their file after it's been closed and we look at their IA report, we then bring it to the CRB for further discussion about whether we want to go further, make recommendations, and do further review or investigation of that file. But again, at that stage, sometimes those files are 6 months old, 9 months old, or a year old. There's a provision that we added that we would have the right to request that a case be reopened for a variety of reasons. That language was in there previously, but the new language would allow us to request that a case be reopened if the chief has already taken disciplinary action and we have not yet had our chance to review the file. And again, I'll spell that out in a bit. Okay, now I'm going to kind of break these down one at a time. So this is going to talk about how and why incoming citizen complaints should not be redacted. Okay. Go ahead. So in the white is the old language, that we are entitled to receive copies within 5 days. In the red is the new language, said copy shall not be redacted unless there is some compelling basis that would warrant such redaction. And in those circumstances, the CRB shall be notified and the chief needs to approve of that. Okay, so their default position right now is to redact all of these complaints. And what I'm proposing here, what we're proposing here, is that those not be redacted, but under certain circumstances, if they find a need to redact it, they would have to notify us. An example of that might be, for example, a domestic violence case where there's a protective order and somebody's safety is an issue, or maybe there's some confidentiality issues. But those don't happen in many of the cases that we see. So the norm should be that we should get these unredacted copies. The exception should be, in certain cases, maybe they shouldn't have to. If this were to happen, we as an organization could make contact with complainants in a timely manner. Okay? Other CRBs operate that way where they get access to this information right away. They provide some information to complainants either in person or by mail, by email. They make contact, they make clear that they're here, we're visible, we have a role. We can make that contact, introduce ourselves, explain what we do, how we do it, what they can expect. Okay? So again, many other CRBs have brochures or some literature or something to give to a complainant to just explain the process. And we think this is important. Our visibility is important. You know, the fact that we need to connect with our community and the complainants. Complainant files a complaint with the New Haven Police Department. They may not know that we even exist. Maybe the New Haven Police Department provides, you know, they're here tonight, provides some contact information about how to reach us. But we really need to be the ones to speak to the complainants and say, we're here, this is our job, this is what we're doing, this is how it works early on in the process. And these are just some examples that we've found from other CRBs, different parts of the country. There's tons out there. So that's about the redacting and non-redacting. Any questions about the redacting or non-redacting of complaints, incoming complaints? Or move on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just, and this is a lot of information.
I know, I'm sorry.
And appreciate you going through it slowly. Just have one question that just came into mind as you're talking about information being redacted and not redacted.
Yeah.
And I would suppose that any letter, I would think that the CRB could create its own template letter
Mhm.
that would go out. But my concern would be with telephone calls or dealing with a complainant directly. How would you guarantee that a member would not pass judgment on an open investigation
Right,
through
and
just having that one-on-one conversation?
so when you say pass judgment, can you
Well,
kind of explain?
kind of siding with the complainant, hearing it and just hearing one side of the story and maybe feeling sympathetic and saying, I agree with you, they shouldn't have done that, without knowing whether or not it was done.
Right, so in an ideal world, if we had access to let's say prosecution's file, the police department's file within 90 days, which can go alongside with whatever we hear from the complainant, then we would start to gather kind of a fuller picture. So I think, my thought about this early introduction would be that it'd be almost perfunctory. You would go in and explain more what we do and how we do it. If they want to kind of provide some information, I think we would have to record that somehow. Later on in this presentation, I talk about the use of investigators, of a private, trained investigator, then maybe they can take on some of that role. But again, this is all implementation. These are implementation questions, and I think we all as a board would have to kind of figure out what would be the best practice and how we would do it. But in terms of, not our hands are tied right now. It's hard for us to reach these complainants, and we're not allowed to see the file. So we're kind of in a.
Can I have?
Sure.
So great question. I actually spoke with the chief of police about this, and we discussed possibly having the attorney reaching out to the complainant, an investigator, and/or having one point person, and then having some questions already put together that were universal that we would use, that the police department would be comfortable with us using. So it would be some sort of universal language, and we would obviously put that together as a team. But that's not something we have now because we can't do that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know there's a lengthy presentation, so I won't interrupt anymore.
Well, no, I'd rather that, if it's in different segments. So if you have questions about a particular segment, it'd be easier to answer those before I go on to this. So the next segment talks about, this access, the earlier access to IA files. Okay. So, as explained before, the IA file, which consists not only of the IA's closed report, it also has police reports, it has statements, it has recorded statements from the police officers who were interviewed as part of the IA investigation. It may have photographs, there's body cam footage, there's all kinds of investigatory material that's contained in the IA file, which again, we're not seeing until the case is closed. Okay, we think it would be important to have earlier access to that investigative information because there may be some important things that we need to act on sooner in the process. They are on a time frame, they meaning the New Haven Police Department is on a time frame of 90 days. But as you can see from this graph and the one that's going to follow, for a variety of reasons, they are not able to adhere to that time frame in many cases. And again, this shows, I know Anne-Marie mentioned this in her opening statement, but this is a pie chart. On the next screen, I have it in bars, Allison put it together. But you can see that in 2023, there's a long delay between the filing of a complaint and the closing of a case. Only 16.1% of all incoming cases, I think there were 28 in 2023, only 16.1% were actually completed in 90 days. Okay, many of them are in this 120 to 200 day period. Some of them, 19.4% of them took over a year. Okay, and so while I'm not here to cast judgment on whatever short shortfalls they might have. I know they have staffing issues. I'm not here to cast judgment on that. I'm just here to say that it really makes our job hard to do because we are really doing nothing for 6 months or sometimes 9 months or a year. Okay, we can't do our job. And again, here's the same data in a different graph form. And again, these extended time frames make it very, very hard for us to do what we should be doing. And again, you know, anybody would tell you if you took a basic class at UNH in investigations, you need to kind of hit early, right? You need to get there close in time to whatever happened. Otherwise, witnesses disappear, evidence is gone, people's memories fade. Okay, so if we were to think that a case warrants some investigation, we can be kind of at a huge disadvantage because we're not allowed to even start until a year sometimes, or 9 months, or 6 months, until that time frame passes. You know, and citizens look at us and wonder, you know, where's the CRB and what are they doing? You know, I filed a complaint with the New Haven Police Department, and IA has its processes, but is there a CRB component? Because we're kind of missing in action. We're not really able to get in there and do what we should be doing. So the new language of the ordinance that's being proposed is that we have access, go ahead. We have access to this information within 90 days of the filing of the complaint. Okay. What this means is that even if the New Haven Police Department is going to be taking longer than 90 days, we are not going to be subject to their timeframes. That's outside of our control. So we want to have our own timeframes that the ordinance kind of requires so that we can do our job in a timely fashion. And there are other subsections that I added in there that would provide that we need to adhere to very strict confidentiality requirements. If I'm doing some work on a case, I'm bound by the attorney-client privilege. Our board members sign a contract, but we would need to kind of make sure that our training includes confidentiality agreements and how we have to be careful with this information. Again, if it's within 90 days and their investigation is going to go further, at least we can get going. We can take a look and we can see, is there something here that we need to act on quickly? And again, a lot of this has to do with, you know, optics. You know, if people want to have confidence in what we do and how we do it, we need to be doing it in a timely way. Right? We lose credibility as a board if we're unable to start working on the case close in time to when the complainant files their complaint. Oopsie. You know, and this idea, these principles of promptness and transparency are critical to any efficiently running CRB. Okay, those are the principles that underlie any CRB work. And again, that's the original language I talked about at the beginning, and all of what I'm talking about is within the spirit of that type of mission statement. Okay, promptness, responsibility to members of the community, an active role in the complaint process. These are all things that we're unable to do as it stands right now, and we're trying to get some changes to make those things happen. So, you know, the question has come up, should we hire an investigator to perform some of these functions? Okay, many other CRBs have paid investigators on their staff. The New York CRB has, you know, a staff of many, many investigators. Up in Hartford, they have 2, and an IG. So, you know, here we have the budget for an investigator. There's some discussion that needs to be had with the board about whether and how we might use one. But just to kind of talk about some suggestions, they could be used in, I think, some valuable ways if this ordinance passes. Again, they can be the one to make that initial in-person introduction. You know, they can have a template. They introduce themselves. Here's the board. Here's our brochure. Do you have any questions? And if they want to make a statement, they can simply record that statement. Okay, but I think that can be kind of across the board, the protocol that would be used if we decide we might want to use an investigator for that purpose. They can be the ones that can go in and look at that first review of the IA case within 90 days. They can sit and they can watch the body cam footage. You know, this is time consuming, and they can report back to board members. You know, this is a serious case, or maybe this is more of a trivial case. Okay, and they can screen those cases for board members so that board members can decide, you know, do we want to take some action? And that investigator, if they're reviewing that file within 90 days and they see something that's pretty important and time sensitive, they can go to the board members and they can say, you know, we need to act on this. This is something that requires immediate investigative work. It's not going to be available to us in a year from now. It's not going to be available to us in 6 months. You know, we as a board should decide to kind of act and investigate this further. So those are some of my ideas of how an investigator might work if in fact we had earlier access to the IA file. Any questions about early access to the IA file within 90 days? Okay. A couple of provisions throughout the ordinance try to ensure that the chief does not act on any disciplinary sanction without first having heard from us. Okay. I know that is not what's supposed to happen, and normally it doesn't happen. But since I have been in this role, it's happened twice. I think Anne Marie tells me that it's happened on other occasions. And that's because, you know, when our delay kind of extends in a prolonged fashion, they need to act, you know, their union and their guidelines need to require some sort of action or some sort of decision on discipline before sometimes we even get to look at the file. So throughout the ordinance, you'll see different places that there should be requirements that the chief not make those kinds of decisions without us being able to go through the process of our investigation, our review, and our making of recommendations to the chief. If the chief must go forward and for some reason because they're up against a deadline, and we were unable to even look at the file, you know, that renders kind of our role to be pretty meaningless. And again, we're making it clear in a couple of different provisions that hearing not go forward. And that's kind of the main provision that states that. And the last provision I really want to talk about is one that I mentioned earlier, which is that this provision would allow us, go ahead, to initiate a complaint on our own, even if a citizen has not, for whatever reason, chosen to do so. There are incidents either in the media or community members make clear to some board members that there's an incident, but somebody's too afraid to come forward. Somebody chooses not to come forward, but we believe that those should be investigated if warranted. Go ahead. So the language that we are proposing is next. That we would have the authority to initiate and contact an independent investigation of an incident involving any member of the police department, even in cases where no civilian complaint has been brought and a majority of the board decides that it's a matter of significant community interest. Okay, so there are a couple of examples that come to mind where this might apply. There was one up in Hartford where in a lockup situation, a police officer kind of punched an inmate who was in handcuffs, and it was all recorded and up on the news. That woman did not want to file a complaint. Okay, the Hartford ordinance allows for the board to file its own complaint or initiate an investigation regardless of the fact that the complainant did not choose to come forward. So this is kind of like a catch-all provision where the board would be given the authority, again, on a majority vote, if a matter of significant public interest was at stake. So the rest, these are kind of our own internal changes to our structure and to our organization. We've had some challenges with recruiting members, with retaining members, with attendance. It slowed some of our business down. These new provisions would allow us to facilitate the better running of business, the better organization of our structure. The appointment process of members would be a bit quicker and more streamlined, and it would allow us as a board to kind of move things a little bit more quickly along. So we're at the end. This is just a summary. We're really appreciative. I know that we were kind of trying to get on the docket earlier, and we finally are here. Oops.
Oh, you're not ready for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So thank you for giving us the opportunity to make this presentation. But, just to recap, what we are trying to do is improve our strength and our efficacy. Okay, we feel like our hands are tied in some areas of the process. We're just trying to do our job, as it's stated. We're trying to help build community trust and confidence that the citizen complaint process actually works, okay, and that it's there for them. We're trying to streamline better document sharing with the New Haven Police Department. Again, we're trying to improve the timeliness of the citizen complaint process on the CRB side. We are trying to operate more efficiently with fewer members, and moving forward, build a stronger membership base, and we'll retain members better. And very importantly, we want to continue to build a collaborative partnership with the New Haven Police Department to work together to maybe agree on some of these things, but the shared mission should be transparency, promptness, and community confidence and trust. Both agencies share those goals, and we're hoping to continue working with them. They've been incredibly helpful so far. We've met with them on a variety of occasions. The chief is here, and he might talk about what parts of this he has trouble with and which parts he might be in agreement with. But those conversations are ongoing, and they're productive and meaningful, and we appreciate that collaboration.
Thank you. Chief Jacobson, if you wouldn't mind coming and joining us up at the table.
My assistant chief.
Absolutely, thank you. Is Attorney King here as well? If Corp Counsel could join us at the table as well. Thank you. Good evening. Thanks for joining us here. If you all wouldn't mind just saying your name and addresses for the record. Sorry, Chief.
Carl Jacobson, 15 Westerly Road, New Haven, Connecticut.
Bert Etienne, 40 Stony Road, Webster.
Dana Smith, 2 Perry Merrill, West Haven.
Patricia King, 32 Vista Terrace, New Haven.
Thank you so much. To start, I would just like to ask a clarifying question. So this is in reference to the new provision authorizing the CRB to initiate a complaint, even if a citizen does not file one. I just wondered how are cases resolved versus when there is a complainant.
So, good evening. Thank you, Chair. Appreciate it. Vice Chair, and other members of the committee. Thank you to the CRB members and Attorney Merkin. We have been working well together, and I would say that we have made some strides, and that things are. I think I'm the first chief that really taken your recommendation. I'm the first chief to give them training. We went on some Saturday trainings, and I think it was very insightful, and they participated. It was really great, and we want to move forward. But I have to start by saying he has filed an MPP, so I'm stuck by those restrictions. But some of them I do agree with, and the labor director is here as well, and has went down the battery, and she's submitted a communication to the board as well. So to answer your question, I'll start with your question, then I have some items that we could cover. So you're saying between a civilian complaint and then one that I open as the chief and I complaint?
Or one that the CRB.
So the CRB is asking to be able to open a complaint, correct? But I would say they already have the ability to do that. You're able to go down to Internal Affairs, file a complaint and listing that person as anonymous. And I would say the chair has done that in the past, and that's been successful. And I think that system, I think that's a checkbox on that already. So if anybody, if you knew somebody that had a complaint and you could summarize their complaint, you can go down. You don't have to put your name on the form. You write anonymous and you do it. And I think that's, the CRB can do that, has done that, and it's worked well. So I think that's, unless Attorney Merkin has a different.
Yeah. That can be done. That can be done. I do think that there's some value in the CRB acting publicly as a group and making a statement that they want to file a complaint as an entity. As a CRB, it doesn't have to be anonymous. It should be a public statement that we want to make a complaint for whatever it wasn't voted on. So I think, yes, the chief is right. There is a way to do it anonymously, but that's kind of like a backdoor way. I don't think it achieves the purpose that I was set out to.
But you could also make that public statement and go down and file a complaint. There's nothing against that.
That's true. I just think, to me, it's a more open, transparent process. If the board votes, the board wants to take it up, the board thinks it's important, the board have the authority and the power to file a complaint as an entity.
To the Internal Affairs Unit or their own entity?
To Internal Affairs.
All right. As long as, it starts at Internal Affairs and ends up in your lap like it does now, that's not really a change of working condition. I don't think we'll work against that.
Okay.
Just so we can, it's just so that there's no back and forth. Everyone has to say they must address you, Mr. Chair.
I agree. I remember my daughter's professor, so I'm not gonna.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think what I'm hearing, Chief Jacobson, thank you for this evening, is that the CRB as an entity can go and file a complaint as the civilian.
I mean, unless I'm wrong, Chief, at the end of that. And if they are doing it because of an incident that they weren't involved, it's very similar. It wouldn't be an anonymous complaint, but it's very similar to an anonymous complaint because anyone can do that.
Anonymously. Also, you can do it as a secret.
Yeah.
And it's a secret. It's the CRB.
So, that's part of the ordinance. There's no harm in adding that.
Well, I would just be concerned about the labor issue because, like I said,
the only question, the other question I have, Madam Chair, out here is, the length of time that complaints get to the CRB. Requires complaints are given to them, and
And I don't think there's a requirement.
okay. So
They're asking, yeah, you're right.
Right, so we do respect there is a requirement. And yes, we are asking that we be given access within 90 days, regardless of their plan. Because the way now, only has access after they complete their investigation. That's their interpretation. There's no language in laws that specifically addresses that, and that's why we're seeking this modification.
that was part of the original approval that wrote that language, and that was the intent. That it will be after the review. This is the review board who review after the process. And then I will leave it for and I'll.
Yeah, I just want to talk about a few of the things that Murphy brought up. She's right. No, we are short. We are running a little bit behind, maybe not as we are behind. And in the CRB, these people have done great work. That's the first thing I think. They've done great work. We've worked together. We've sat in rooms together. What we've seen in confidential information leaked in the past. There was a Google Doc site that I was told that press had access to, and just things that if it's a closed investigation, nothing can be tainted. They pick up their investigation, then they can do whatever they want when it's closed. I just think it's really crucial to stick with the closed investigation. But on that point, yes, we are behind. We are, but part of my, you've seen in the paper, we're short district managers, but I'm making sergeants. Assistant Chief Deputy and Lieutenant Smith, that's who does their investigation, sergeant. So I'm gonna be able to put more people into internal affairs, catch that up. In a perfect world, it's prior to 90 days were completed, they get theirs. Now, per the CBA, I have to render discipline in 90 days. So within 180 days, this is pretty much all wrapped up or less. And that's what I want, because it's not fair to the officers to have something hanging over their head for such a length of time. So I'm committed to that. I'm committed to a timeline that's fair with them. I would say there was a couple instances where I did render discipline early, and that was my mistake. I take full responsibility for that. But I'll give you an example. I have a couple of IEs coming to a close now. I have 4 people retiring who are in that IEs. For them to retire due to the police accountability bill, I have to render discipline before they retire. So I think what Merkin said, if it is an emergency situation, let us know, give us at least 2 weeks. I have no problem with that. I'm willing to work with them. Like I said, I agree. But I think the confidentiality piece is important. I can't speak to I think a single investigator, an investigator being hired would be more logical. But I can't speak to that because of the labor complaints, right? But I still think that internal affairs being closed is very important.
So once the case is closed, they were trying to investigate more. Said that beginning, but and if investigate, my next intention was humbly sometimes a lot of these folks are always in a good relationship. Where is the training? Who is preparing to do proper investigation that ultimately are going to give them the teeth on officers? right now as review board. But it sounds like we're trying to transition to an investigative board. There's a difference.
Can I respond to that? Sure. The original language, of course, wasn't a part of the original drafting. It sounds like you made. However, the original language does contain the word review and investigate. Okay, and that's not in red, that's in black. So that language is there. And whatever that means, or however we interpret that or apply that, we can have a debate about that. But that language is throughout. The original ordinance talked about the hiring of investigator. Okay, the term investigator is in black, not red. So every CRB is a CRB that are used. However, many models review and the ability to investigate. So while I'm reading of this original ordinance, which uses the word investigate, but contains that. And so it's there. So I understand their concerns that we are not trained, we're not police officers, we're not law enforcement. But no CRB is. Okay, many CRBs hire trained investigators, and maybe that's where we're going. Okay, but just because we're called a CRB doesn't limit us to a quote unquote review. Many CRBs take on the role of doing investigation and review. So that I would just voice that.
So I just want to say that sometimes our hands are tied. If there's a case that was open in 2021 or 2022, let's just say 2021, for example, if that case gets closed this month, we may not be able to locate that individual. We may not be able to contact them. They may not have the same address. They may have moved out of state, and we have never been able to make contact with that person. And so are we really there for that individual? Say no. So can we review that case that much longer? No. And I appreciate the efforts of the police department in moving forward to try to get these cases completed within 90 days. And I'm hoping we can eventually be there, but unfortunately we're not there right now. And so that puts us in a bad situation and our hands are tied.
And I would say, a lot of the cases that do take longer time are cases where officers were either arrested or cases that I opened up, not really civilian complaints. There are a few, but we have to also remember, we're working some cases where they've subpoenaed numerous phone records, which takes a long time, have gone through numerous GPS locations and other things. These are full-on investigations. And I get it, they want to be able to see them as soon as possible. I'm just making the pledge as a chief that we will get to that point, or we need to consider them hiring an investigator. I've attended many meetings and not this company, they're here, they're very good, but I've seen meetings where it's just a complete meeting of arguments. It's a complete meeting, and they're getting better. But I think we both need to clean up our sides of the street, right? I need to get to 90 days. They need some things to get to a quorum and other things. And I think that's where we start. You get your process down, I'll get my process down better, and then we move on to maybe you hiring an investigator or whatever. So it's important for me to work with you and build that confidence with the community, but it's important for me also to the officers that have trusted us with their confidentiality in their cases, that we also protect them as well. Not from you, I'm not saying that you're the bad people in the room, but there's things that get out that shouldn't be getting out. I know that recently that you have changed the Google Doc system and it's gonna be better, and that's great, but let's make sure it works before I give you the case day one, right? That's our stance on that.
Chair, you mind if I speak? Please. I just want to speak to the cases that we have done. I've been recently down in internal affairs since April. I know the numbers in our screen since I've been in internal affairs, we closed 28 cases. So that's a significant amount of cases that have been done to include 21, 22, 24. Also, with that being said, the board would like to have their hands on the case immediately to, as far as when the cases are closed. We only have 1 or 2 of the board members actually come in to view those closed cases. So within the ordinance, it states in their bylaws or the ordinance, I'm not sure which one it is, that you must be there within, I think it's 2 months. If it's 2 months, then I guess something to this effect. But I have a running list of who comes in to review the files as far as those cases. And as far as this year, I have 2 people that came in. So I want you to state that out there. So they want their hands on the cases, but when they're closed,
Yes. So being on the CRB for some time now, I've gotten to see a lot of different things and a lot of different changes moving in a positive direction, which is great. Unfortunately, because we don't have access to cases so a significant amount of time, a lot of members get frustrated and they feel like, well, we can't contact the complainant. We can't get all of this information that we really would have liked to have before. So, we're just kind of hearing the summary at this point. It doesn't matter if you review the file, if it's a year or 2 years later, what do you really, like, are you going to make a significant impact with the recommendation? So we're doing the best we can with making recommendations, even if he's doing a great job with putting them in place and implementing them, but there's a lot more that needs to be done. And unless we have access, or die.
So, I hear the chair, I respect first, but how are we asking for more? When we can't on your behalf. You, so, this is closed, job is to come, you, reports, right? That's work. It takes time. So I would have to respectfully, but not beforehand, as we get the work. You still have to come in and do and to on a consistent basis are the only two. Are we asking for more?
Can I remember?
Any questions?
I have a question regarding the last page, so I'll deal with it.
I guess I just wanted to state for everybody that it's right that both and for the department to say that it can't do well with the current ordinance, I don't think is necessarily relevant to the fact that we're watching. We're trying, as Chair said, we're trying to move forward with some momentum. We have hopes and plans to improve ourselves. And we believe that this is part of that change, and this is part of that improvement. And so to say, well, they can't even handle things as it is, I understand that, and that's very frustrating for us as well. Okay, but we're trying to get better and do things differently, and this is an important tool, I believe, for us to look at.
I have just one final question, and it's regarding the proposed changes to the internal CRB organization structure. Maybe because I need a free sandwich. I'm not confident with what the request is.
Right, so I think maybe Amber, you know, that structural changes, maybe the quorum change, maybe she's the better person, or the board members. I was working more on the legal kind of parts to this.
Just want to make sure. Yeah, it's
Quorum.
It's a quorum and then the appointment and reappointment.
I see. So, there was a time when we lost form requirements that we couldn't meet. So therefore, several meetings could not take any action at all because we didn't have a quorum. So, we found out eventually that we're under the rules of all four. We'd like to have this written into the ordinance. Right now, it's written differently.
Right, I think our current ordinance says that a set of members. And what we're changing that to change that to is that the majority of current members present. That would constitute. And as John said, that does line up with the definition of quorum for other boards throughout the city. A majority of members present.
And I'm sorry, I don't remember how many members there are. How many members do we have in this here? Not. Oh, okay, so. Can I take? Oh, that's right, so, and I think you're only short two currently, as far as appointment, not as many, not according to how many are attending. I think we're only short two currently.
Right, we've had some appointments, but we're still short more than two.
This is what happens when our are sick.
List right now.
Do you have an active list of, as chair of all the members? Probably.
So 9 with 3 vacancies. 9 now.
You have 3 current vacancies.
According to this.
We have 8 active members. And we have our other.
Okay. All the representatives won't have to close your mouth. Because of those quorums, all the representatives.
One member for each district, one member of the board of elders, and at least 2 at-large members.
In 10 for each district, plus oversight brings to 15.
So I also want to say that we have 1, 2, 3 new members, and that process took a very long time. Almost a year.
At one point, we were down to maybe 5 active members. That might be one reason until there didn't see a lot of board members going in and do investigations because we don't have.
And when you say is the other members just quit, I mean, I don't understand why you only.
So we have 1 member who just resigned fairly recently. We have 1 member who doesn't send, or we just don't hear from.
And some, a couple members are uncomfortable with going to internal affairs to do the review of the documents.
But we also changed it to City Hall as well.
And out of this list of 3,
Okay. And then the second part, membership appointment, reappointment, and approval process has been streamlined to better facilitate. I'm not sure what this means, like, changed or is it the same?
There's some changes, but our administrator was here, because she was the one that really is more knowledgeable about that part of this, or maybe.
So what change are you requesting on this part? Or are you thinking you're-
She can help us, comes to the rescue.
Hello. Catherine Lamar, my business address is 165 Church Street. I think I can help with it. But one of the challenges that the CRB has had when we losing members to attrition is that the appointing authority, the community management teams, not responded efficiently and effectively in replacing the members and making those recommendations to the mayor's office. So there is a, I'm not trying to align the community management teams, but they're just not, the appointing authorities are not moving quickly enough to fill those positions. The other thing, I really just want to point this out, under the city ordinances, the quorum is, a majority of the members that are seated. When you have 7 members, you're down to 7 members. The 2 members are, just 2 members are just protest, not showing up, or showing up and not participating, then the board's not effective. And the appointing authorities really should do something about that, but they don't. And that is the big problem. I've been trying to work with the organization of the CRB for some time now. There have been significant improvements. Dealing with the quorum issue and dealing with the appointing authority are the 2 structural changes that I think would have the most benefit to the CRB in terms of its ability to. Am I?
Yeah.
Are you distracted? Okay.
So who is the appointing authority?
There are members appointment. Most of the members are appointed by the community management teams.
The 10 community.
And it is our intent to change that. So that'll be part of our process, so that the community management team will no longer be that authority. It will go directly to the mayor's office. And the members are one committee. I understand that. What I'm saying is that the CMT would no longer be handling through the CMT to the mayor. It will go directly to the mayor's office. And then along with the member of large that the board of aldermen has through that appointment process.
If I could be heard, the CMTs are the nominating authorities. The nominations go from the CMTs to the mayor.
Right.
The mayor, yeah.
The CMT
Yeah,
process,
right.
because that's what I think.
That's what they're, yes, I agree with that.
Okay. And so my last question then is what specifically you're looking for is to streamline the membership process, which we're going to do by either meeting the CNTs, and is there any other issue that we need to address by ordinance?
Other than the quorum? Yeah, no. I would just take that language. If I
Sure can do it.
The only thing I would worry about is the CMTs make it representative of the entire city, right? You don't want everybody from one area. That's not gonna work. I don't know how you do it, I'm not trying to, but I think the board members should be representative of the entire city. And I think the concept was each community management perspective was spread out to all the policing districts, so you got somebody from all throughout the city. But I mean, you could still gotta do that another.
Yeah, we have to create that. Those 50 representatives for the whole city.
I think you brought up a great point, which is, I feel like if you're representing an area, you should live in that area. And so that's problematic right now. It's hard for you to represent your area, go to your area meetings, work with your area supervisor if you're not actually in that area. That makes sense, or?
I'm not following. So there are people that I'm not following.
So if we have a member who represents a specific area, let's just say, yeah, or something, and they don't live there, they moved out of that area to a different area, they're still representing that area.
I don't know if this would be helpful, but our administrator who's watching gets something to, she says that she can be heard. I don't know if you want to put her on speakerphone or if that's appropriate to make that request. I don't want to buy things down or save it for another day.
It's up to the chair. Could you read what it is?
She just says, I can respond to these points. I can help, ask if I can speak from the phone. So again, I don't break any rules or anything like that.
We did announce this meeting is hybrid, it's in person. And so for that purpose, that, I think it would be a really good.
I agree. But if she wants to message you, you think that's certainly acceptable. Well, I don't know if this is going to be tabled or if it's going to be second part to this, and so we would need to clarify this piece of it because it sounds like it's not clear.
I think, Madam Chair, if they would want to send in testimony, and that's anybody that's watching, would want to send in testimony. It probably doesn't seem likely that we would settle this tonight. But we would certainly, through the chair, consider more testimony as we continue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to help clarify, maybe I think the list of the proposed changes that we received, it sort of, I think, explains the idea here. It says that there's a proposal to create the ability for individuals to self-nominate directly to the mayor to serve their community as representative from a neighborhood or community management team. Then there's a change to the membership definition to include that neighborhood representatives must live in that neighborhood. And then the last piece is that it looks like resignation from the board must be done in writing and members must serve for 60 days thereafter to prevent extended vacancy. So I think that's what we're talking about. Right. That seems like what the proposal is.
Before we close, can I have one more comment? I just want to really, before my daughter's wedding, I want to be clear that the three people sitting up here are awesome. I'm willing to do what we continue to do. You said community, trust, and confidence. I work on that every day. And I hope that at some point that I would see the CRB at community events with a table, asking people for complaints, or whatever. There's a way to build community trust without just oversight of the police, right? And I just really think these guys and girls are trying to do the right thing, and I appreciate them.
That's your turn, Kim.
Can I just have a couple of minor points? Given the important issues that have been discussed. In the proposal from the CRB under 2-798, that all members shall be residents of the city. The charter actually requires electors, and I know we've explored this issue in the past, and I know that council for the board has indicated that we would need enabling legislation to not have it, to allow us to appoint board that are not elected. So I wanted to point that out. And also Alder Saban mentioned the resignation process. There is also a section in the charter that deals with the resignation, vacancies in appointed office. And resignation could be submitted to the chair, but also needs to be submitted to the leader. So, and there's also a removal process in the charter. So, you know, the chair may want to initiate that removal process, but there are separate processes in the charter. So I don't think there are major issues that, you know, couldn't be resolved with really working on the language, but those are a little inconsistent with the charter. So.
Thank you. Just to follow on what the chief said about the police department wanting to be transparent and work further on behalf of the community, the CRB wants to do the same thing. But one of the reasons we're here is we feel like some of the things that we've addressed will enable us to be there more for the community. Because right now we feel like we're not able to share what we're doing and to be there for the community. It's early in the process as we would like to be. And Alder Frillo, if I could go all the way back to your very first question, you asked about access and somebody on the board where they get a phone call or something and you start to develop an opinion too early about a piece of thing like that. Would just say that our experience, or my experience of being on board as far as that, you take in the material about all the information related to a case, the original complaint written by hand, more often than not by the complainant, and then read the reports submitted by police officers, view the body cam. First thing that you see starts to affect your opinion. What we've learned from experience is that until you see everything, you can't really form any judgment. But it's really impossible to not, for example, read a complaint and hear about somebody describe something awful that happened to them and not immediately start to feel, oh my gosh, this is terrible. We have to figure this out. But then knowing that later on you see a body cam, for example, that shows the opposite of what the complaint might be, then you put together the whole picture. So I think early access and the risk of the informed opinion is solved by CRB kind of doing its full job over the course of time. Thank you.
I think at this stage, we'll open the for comment. So thank you all for joining us. I have 3 people on my list, but I will take this. This one was this J1 partner. Oh yeah, and if you don't mind, stick with the rack. Just yeah. Please state your name and address. I'm going to bring you minutes to testify.
Yes, good evening, thank you everyone. J1 Carter, address 106 Falcon Street, William, Connecticut. I am an active member of the CRB district. And I think context and history matters in a matter like this. I do support the proposals that were requested. One being is that the CRB was originally marketed for people who feel that more for the community, representing some folks who may that they don't have right representation when things happen. So there were people on board who had some unexplained expectations, whether it be from powers to be. Overall, as things were revealed in time, they realized that what we thought would be it exists, and people began to just not participate 100%. So what we're asking for is no different than what all others may have. And anything I say, no disrespect, but just because an attendance rate is 100% doesn't take away the value of every capacity of our have. In addition to this, there's moments within our community where members feel like they feel like things can move in a certain direction, and because the CRD does exist, it's more of a check and balance process. We look at it from that setting, and because of that, we want to have as much power as we can, because on the other side of the aisle, we have as much power as we have, and we just want to be able to have quality impact for everyone through representation. Give an example of discretion that we have is that there's some people in our community who feel unsafe, and they think that it's going to go any further and things going to change, especially when you hear well-known cases where they see that unjust matters happening that goes unanswered. So they feel that their little issue may not be concerned. And the main thing is that we want to have due process for everyone, and we want to respect that. Another example could be when an officer may make a wrong complaint of a case, and they feel like if they were to complain, they still want to do anything because they have discretion. However, when they pursue it in court matter, it figures out. So the question is, what can we do before things get to court cases where it favors an area, but because of the due process prior to that, can we make those changes? Another thing I would like to say is that, yes, I think that we can move things forward as a community here. There's pointing fingers in any direction, but the matter is just to move forward and do what's right for our community. And the reason we stand by these changes is because we have realized that at a certain point, our attendance have failed. And then we also seen that there was a bit of a capacity with our bylaws where we can't move forward because we didn't quorum. But the overall question of this matter is we should be quorum at all times. I open up the windows here. And so forth and so forth. We want to go by this line by line. I don't have time. But the fact of the matter is that we're just trying to make sure there's a real process of balance. Respecting that.
Thank you so much. Would you add anything else to that? Thank you so much for your time. Next up, I have Lisa Paul. Please state your name and record and 3 minutes to speak.
It's my home from New Drive, New England. I am just here. I support CRB. First and foremost, the police department. That chief is doing a great job and keeps changes he needs to. It's a challenge. It's been an uphill challenge for the last 2 years. Their budget was cut. They're short officers. They have a lot going on in the department. I think he's doing a good job to turn it around to get to where we need to be. We need more officers. The climate of society today is making it very challenging to obtain more officers to do the work that needs to be done. I do think the CRB is moving in the right direction. I have one idea for holding the CMTs accountable. If the CRB is paying an administrator to work for them, which I believe is the role of this person, that person should be attending the CMT meetings to say to the CMT chairs, listen, we gotta get on board, we have to find somebody. We need to hold people accountable for what their position is. It's not, I just want to run the management team and have a meeting and people come or they don't come. We need to make everybody feel that this is a valuable role and that they are needed. The city needs you to do your job, and this is what you're doing. You're not doing their job, and maybe they need to be changed, but if we don't hold everybody accountable, like this whole board is about holding the police accountable to make sure that their just go through properly and that they're reviewed. We need to hold everybody accountable. So why not send the administrator out to say, listen, your district has no representation, because they are supposed to represent every policing district. That goes back to the beginning of the CRB's house on here. I agree with the chief reacting. some of that information. I don't think is necessary to get there. I volunteer in probate court. I'm a court-appointed advocate for children. I go through extensive training before I can even volunteer. Maybe the CRB members need to have some training, something in place to understand the value of confidentiality, the value of what this board is actually all about. It's not just I want to be on because I've heard some people want to be on because they don't like police officers and they want to go and make sure things are right. People are that want to be on because they like police officers and want to support the department. They have to have the right mindset to be a member of the CRB. So when we advocate to get somebody from every district, we need to make sure that they're trained, and I think the chief is on board with what he said earlier, working with the CRB to make sure everybody knows the process and how it goes. I do have some signatures just in support of the CRB, the timely manner. Of course, it's in disarray because of trips and whatnot, but at the end of the day, I think both houses are.
Yeah, thank you so much. Last on my list, I have Bruce Oren. Good night. Please take your name and address for the record.
Bruce Oren, 92 Anita Street, New Haven. I'm in support of the ordinance to improve the CRB. The only thing I have to add is that although the current chief is obviously sympathetic to the CRB and the greater community, that it might be beneficial to spell out the needs for redaction of the complaints that go to the CRB. That another administration might find all kinds of reasons to redact that are inappropriate. If it were spelled out in the ordinance, that would be beneficial.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions? Thank you so much for testifying. So now I'm going to ask if there are any other members of the public who wish to testify on this item. For a second, if there are any members of the public who are wishing to testify on this item, please come here. And for a third time, if there are any members of the public wishing to testify forward, I would like to recognize our colleague, Raven, who is joining us on our version. So I think at this point, most of this. I'll do it for a while.
Madam Chair, will we close the portion?
There's no getting questions about it. The Office of Labor Relations.
I think we've received it. Thank you. All right, so we're going to complete the resolution portion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we have the blue. Sorry, I supposed to consider the final one.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the item as it was presented to us this evening. So the item, I move it by substitution.
discussion, of course. Discussion.
Question raised Sam first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did read the material and I'm aware of this item since we came to the City Plan Commission. But given the fact that I'm not able to, I'll not vote on this item. But what I saw before the City Plan Commission seems to make sense, and I voted in favor of the withdrawal. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It seems clear, the language is clear. Council reviewed, city can, as we heard from a colleague from the 25th Ward, verified that city can has heard this. I had a little concern with the manufacturing piece, but it was clarified, and so I am in support of sending this as a daily recommendation to the board. Thank you, ma'am.
All those in favor of this, of the item as amended, please say aye. Aye. Any, noes? Any abstentions?
Not voting.
Not voting, so, well, the item, which moves us, we go to our item 2, which takes us to our third item on the agenda, regarding the CRB. Alderman.
Madam Chair, I move this item as it was presented for discussion.
Second. Item was moved second, discussion.
I should say something.
All right, so this is just,
Say something to start.
yeah, oh, yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, we've heard a lot. We appreciated the attorney, working who came in for the chair, vice chair of the CRB and the proposed ordinances, the proposed ordinance modifications that they have given. There is a lot of information for us to mull over. And I'm looking forward to reading through all of this information. And I think that in light of what our court counsel has said, and in light of some pending matters, I think that it is wise for us to hold off from any voting on this item and to say this is what we've had with discussion on this now, and it is my intent to withdraw my motion of moving it, but I just moved just discussion for this point. Take no action on this item.
You still have received a little from the public, make our colleague from the 20th Ward, for us, Angela Smith, I'm agreeing with my vice chair. I think that, listen. Mr. Vincent, do you have just the?
I don't have it, that was not up to me.
Oh,
If you go to me, I could, like,
myself. Oh, no, good, thank you.
Well, if there's no other discussion, Madam Chair, I will withdraw my motion. And, um, and then we will take no action on it at this time.
So with no further discussion, we're not taking action.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
I need to move the second discussion. Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the abstentions, not voting. Thank you. We are adjourned this evening.
Really?
that makes it official.